Hello there, great person, and welcome back to Let's Dive into Warhammer 40K. Today, last video about the Dark Elder. After that, there will be the Orcs, and then the Tyranids, then the Tau. Then we will start with other stuff. So there's going to be Horus Heresy, there's going to be Bricky's video reaction, because people want me to watch that apparently very badly, and I will watch it. We will watch that, and also Mechanicus and other stuff after that. And I can't wait to, get to know more about all of it. But first, we will start with the Dark Elder, or let's say we will end with them. Whatever you say, don't know what you say, but we're gonna go now. So let's have some fun here. And as always, if you like this video, consider liking the original video I'm reacting to. It's in the link in the description of the video here, and also consider liking this one, my video, and subscribing if you like my content. Of course, that helps a lot. We just reached 1,600 people, which is very cool, and thanks to everyone who subscribed, and I hope you like the content. Also, we will do these kinds of videos every 2 days. I had the poll. I will leave the poll up, but it seems pretty clear that like the best solution, the best way for you is if I do a video every 2 days. So if you still want to give me your opinion on that, make sure to take part in the poll. It's and the channel info. Anyway, I talked a lot now, so let's just go. The cabals. Great.
The cabals of the Jakari are essentially its power structure. It's not really a political structure in any sense, more a loose grouping of autonomous organisations who are a blend of organised crime, pirates and aristocratic nobility. All the best things for a healthy society together at last. The cabals will vary wildly in terms of role, territory, reputation, power and so on. Rivalry is fierce, and assassination attempts between bitter enemies is common. A small cabal will often house several hundred Eldar, while a major house may contain millions. In some respects, it's not all that dissimilar to a strange combination of Hive City nobles seeking to retain family power mixed with Underhive gang warfare. They will focus on
okay, so it's basically Game of Thrones in space, only worse. Like, the backstabbing seems to be even worse here, which is something. I mean, in Game of Thrones it was pretty bad, but now I kind of want a Game of Thrones TV show about this. Let's see what we get, though. Let's see what we get. But I really like that. Yeah, last time, I know some people have told me, yes, of course they're backstabbing. That's the nature, so better be careful. They have to be careful. I get it. Like, I get it. It's this is the epitome of Game of Thrones currently for me. Even though I know they have probably been created before Westeros was, so...
on their day-to-day activities of capturing slaves, manufacturing drugs and weapons, territory control, and of course cutting the throats of any upstarts who are developing ideas above their station. Elitism and cabal status is a way of life, with many areas of the city only being accessible to certain noble houses. Overlord Vect, of course, crushed the old order when many of the Jakari lords were killed, and this is when the system of cabals became embedded in the Jakari way of life.
But I think he just said he killed all the Eldar guys. Doesn't that mean that they have less factions now? Or does that mean that they were not part of the cabals that he killed? I don't know.
Because of the benefits that exist from membership within a cabal, competition to enter their ranks is fierce, and this means it's often difficult to fully eradicate a cabal, as the turnover of new applicants is always very high, with dangerous tasks being doled out to the newest members. Seniority.
Yeah, okay. So this seems very gangy, like Gangs of New York style, or Peaky Blinders. Is Peaky Blinders that show about some gangs? I've not seen it. It's supposed to be good, but yeah. That sounds a bit like that, like or a mafia. Perhaps more like a mafia or not a gang. I don't know.
Because of this, especially in areas of the city controlled by multiple lower-level cabals, the streets often appear more like a war zone, with continual running battles and skirmishes on a near-daily basis. These are largely ignored, though, by the more powerful cabals who wouldn't want to dirty themselves with such crude affairs when a creative blade in the dark is altogether more effective. These internal affairs of Cremora are not what most Jakari truly aspire to, though. The true prize is to take part in a raid upon the materium. Raids into real space are usually concerned with two things: the acquisition of
slaves. They want slaves and fun. They want slaves and fun. Let's see what he says.
New slaves for horrifying torture or just decadent pain feasts with no limits.
Yeah,
However,
see?
for those attending and returning from such raids, they have unseen benefits, but not of course for the mortals they leave weeping in their wake. Raids into the materium will boost a Jakari's standing in their cabal, and dependent on its success, also with other cabals.
Okay, so I want a movie of... I just love to think about so many movie ideas, because we know there's going to be probably I hope it is, it's already in the making, a cinematic universe or whatever thing. And I just, this is like, again, a great plot. Like, you are raided by Dark Elder, you see all the gory stuff, like not all the gory stuff, perhaps. Like, I don't need to see all of it, but and then there is some revenge, and they try to attack Gamora, and perhaps like go to the wrong city or district or whatever, and something else is gonna happen. And yeah, I don't know, but this all feels pretty well to be adapted. All of this, like, there are so many thousand stories you could tell with this, which is probably what already happened. There are already thousands of stories probably have been told about this, and I can't wait to read more. And yeah, this is so good, such a great world. I think I'm currently diving into the Dark Elder a lot. Like, I know them pretty well now. I feel like, of course, not their intricacies, but I think from all the races next to the humans, I know them the best. Perhaps the video is a bit too detailed. I don't feel so, but I feel I've got a pretty good grasp on them now. So can't wait for more of their kind and their kind ways.
Successful raids are one means by which a cabal can rise to a position of becoming noteworthy over other rivals without petty street skirmishing. In truth though, raids are usually carried out by the major cabals, because this is what they will primarily focus their resources and manpower on. They will launch all-out raids with attack craft on anything from helpless feral worlds to hive cities, where they will plunder its resources and drag thousands of slaves back to the darkness of Cremora.
Okay, so their great personality shines through here. I don't know, are these like Dark Elf Cabal warrior S's, or is that even... Yeah, she seems to be a woman as well, whatever. But I just thought of something, like, what about a story about them doing a raid and doing torturous stuff and stuff like that? And I don't know what makes them happy. I don't care. But then they discover they took someone with them who's not who it seems he is or she, and that might go into a action genre, like if the person is very powerful, or it might also go into deep horror when they realize they plundered a world that's perhaps a bit off of the sides, and there is something weird and evil from beyond time or whatever that they now have in their ranks, and they have to stand against it somehow, and they can't deal with it. And I'm sorry, perhaps I'm too creative today, perhaps, but I see so many great stories here, and yeah, her personality here shines. Apparently, you have to do that in battle. Like, isn't that a bit impractical? Like, all the skin showing, like, wouldn't you get stabbed a lot? Or is that to move faster? Like, sometimes I've heard arguments for, like, armor like this, whatever, to reduce friction or whatever, so you are as fast as possible and as nimble as possible. But I don't think it works this way. Perhaps it's rule of cool and they don't care. Perhaps because then they are quicker to do other fun stuff. I don't know.
Unlike many races in the 41st millennium, the Jakari commit significant time to gaining intel on their targets. This is because raiding can be an expensive, dangerous task to carry out, and you wouldn't want, say, a surprise force of Astartes to spoil your plans.
Yes.
The core goal is to return with enough wealth, however that is going to be calculated to justify the assault and any losses incurred. Another difference when it comes to Jakari raids is that it's rarely a stand-up fight. Within the galaxy of the future, it's interesting to consider that most battles are waged in a relatively straight-up fashion. Orcs will just throw everything at you, Necron the same, Tyranid the same. It's really only Chaos and the Tau who might be more devious in their plans.
And the humans, probably. Yeah, I get that. Like we have this animalistic kind of warfare and this very planned through warfare, probably. And I like that. I would love to see some variations on that. That's also a cool setup.
Now, it obviously would be silly to suggest that every single faction fights like this every single time, or that there are no factions, including Imperials, who don't use some form of intelligence gathering or utilize stealth and more covert, underhanded methods to win the day. Because, of course, we could list off countless examples from assassins to infiltration units. Even the orcs have infiltration units. But what's notable, though,
for the lulz, or why do they have them? I can't wait for the orc video in 2 days. It's gonna be so funny.
Is how much the Jakari favour engagements that are less of a straight fight, and they actively will avoid it where possible. For them, traits like honour are merely something that should just be exploited. They will always hit the enemy's weak points and engage in continual misdirection and sabotage. If it means shooting someone in the back, they're going to do it every single time.
And why wouldn't you? Like in a war, why wouldn't you? I know there is this idea of honor in war and whatever, but I think in this kind of world, in this harsh, wild waste of a universe, it's probably a bad idea to do that, like to try to hold on to honor, even though I'm sure some will do it, probably, and I can't wait to see how that plays out, but yeah.
They'll focus attacks on command elements, officers, communications. They will seek to quickly create disorientation and panic in their enemy, and they will feel no shame in fading into the shadows where fighting gets a little too intense if it means that they can counterattack a weakened unit elsewhere. And it should go without saying that any target is fair game, be they armed, unarmed, men, women, children. It's all the same for them, and the less threat they pose, actually, all the better.
Yeah.
Like most
because then you can instill more pain and suffering, probably.
Forces, be they Imperial, Eldari, or Xenos, a Cabal can often favour a style of attack. So this could be winged attack craft, deploying heavy amounts of infantry firepower, stacked gunships to suppress and crush enemy positions. Despite their use of craft, most Dark Eldar will always prefer getting into close combat above any ranged engagement, and this is why they don't often have very heavy-duty ranged firepower. And the reasons for this should be obvious, because it enables them to savour the suffering and torment of their victims as they lacerate and tear their flesh apart in all manners of creative death dances. This is why their vehicles are often fast and lightweight, because the role is to really enable them to get up close into combat as quickly as possible.
Let me guess, they also use a lot of poison and stuff that will just paralyze, so they can like paralyze all of them, take them home and skin them alive and stuff like that. Some fun stuff like that. They're going to do that.
These orgies of visceral bloodletting often lead to streets being left awash with blood, with any victims not being dragged back to Camorra lying in open view as the shivering remains of hacked victims are simply strewn about the place. And this is but the tip of the iceberg, of course. Many Jakari raids engage in horrifying practices, disfiguring victims, flensing skin from body, and then dragging their screaming captives together like a brace of animals knotted by their own skin.
Why, guys? I mean, I know why. Jesus freaking Christ. Why? God. Oh yeah, by the way, Hellraiser 1, I'm gonna watch that next weekend, but why? Thought of that because it's gonna be horrible as well, I think. Yeah, that's like a bit human centipede. I don't know, you know?
Some may be pinned together, some Jakari may even remove the faces of their victims with brutal but surgical precision to enhance the screaming torment of those around them into a nightmarish cacophony of despair.
Yeah, and then they wear them and look at them with their faces to show them what they don't have anymore. And then the victims' eyelids are cut away, so they have to look at their own faces being worn by these whatever. Oh, witch course.
Then we come to...
It's witch with a Y, not IT. I see. They're probably witches as well, but oh, that's so cool. Let's see how many traits from classical witches they have. Someone in the comments said it as well. I'm sorry, you know my name. My memory of names is very bad, but yeah, they told me that there are many fairy tale allusions in the Elder, and of course witches here in Gomorrah. Even though I would like, it's a Bible story, but you could class it as a fairy tale depending on who you are. But you know what I mean? Like this mythic, let's say mythic tales. I would consider Bible a mythic tale as well. And yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah and witch hunts and witches and all this stuff that's certainly a very mythic element, which fits, by the way. I don't know if you know this, but in Germany, the elves are very horrifying creatures. Um, at least in folklore, like they took away your children and stuff like that. Like there's this very famous poem that I think I don't know if it's still the way, but when I was going to school, everyone had to learn it. It's called the Erlenkönig, which is called like the I don't even know. It's an oak. It's an, I don't know, it's some kind of tree king, but it's a mistranslation. And Goethe wanted to say Elven King. So there's this horrific tale about an elven king who lives in the forest and tries to get the children to play with him and abduct them, and in the end he sucks away the life of a child and stuff like that. So elves that are not Tolkienian, let's say, are horrifying, very horrifying stuff, and only because of Tolkien's works. I think, if I know, perhaps I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, just perhaps correct me in the comments. I would be interested in it. But I think that from Tolkien onwards, elves are these mythical, pristine creatures, and here they are like more what they are in folklore. So that is pretty cool. Like we have got the Eldar, which are more like the good ones that might be more this pristine archetype, and here we have the more German, Austrian, Swiss, Hungarian, even perhaps, and Polish archetype of an elf. So I love that. That's cool.
The witch cults, the providers of public perversion.
Are only women witches here? Like, I know there were male witches in history as well, but
these are also known as the cults of the arenas, for they arrange large gladiatorial battles for the masses to enjoy, except honour and skill are not on the menu here. They're designed only to be more violent and extreme with each engagement. The reason for these arenas' existence at all is that despite continual raids, there cannot possibly be enough mortal slaves for each Jakari to engage in continual personal torture.
Yeah, that's true. Also, I just thought of it. They have to get more and more creative with the torture to probably satiate their needs. Let's say it. Let's express it like that. So they probably are very intelligent as well.
So instead, these events arenas are ways for an ordinary Jakari to wet their whistle, so to speak.
Great.
Without the witch cults, it's debatable how long it would be before Jakari began to turn on each other, just as they did toward the final days in the fall, where the dark cults of the ELDAR hunted the streets, seeking out any and all in order to satisfy their insatiable lust for suffering. So these disturbing arena engagements are actually a very important way of keeping the dark thirsting wolf at the door for the Jakari. Obviously though, in order for this to be effective, the arena shows need to be spectacular in their horror, and they rarely disappoint. The carnage on display leaves audiences feeling well satisfied, having witnessed appalling Xenos predators gorge themselves on unwilling victims, or one-on-one battles where the end result is usually an extended death in the most cruel display of barbarism.
Okay, great stuff. Great stuff. I also like that they are it's like I'm coming back to the idea again of them being Slaanesh cultists, but not like by proxy, because here again they have an institution that like it protects them from turning on each other, of course. Okay, let me rephrase that. It protects them from turning more on each other than they usually are, so they don't get wiped out by themselves. So it's like a protective thing, but it is also an institution to again worship Slaanesh through the most horrible actions, so that everyone has the possibility to worship Slaanesh, even though they don't do it. I know the stuff you told me. Like I know they might not either don't see it or hate it, but they have to do it. So it's like the witches are like priests a bit here. I feel a bit. I don't know if you would agree, but that's how I read it.
Arenas themselves will vary from being strange mazes of death traps to
Hunger
a field
Games.
of raised platforms filled with spinning blades, pools of acid below, and not to mention those with all manner of strange beasts, usually with large amounts of teeth.
And claws.
Some use the bizarre way that physics seem to become flexible within the webway, as it is observed by mortals who set eyes on Kimura. These arenas could contain strange kinetic traps, mechanisms that are energy-based hazards, or just spaces that defy any rational sense.
Oh god, I would love to write a story in one of those things. It would be so fun and so horrifying. And I just thought of like weird time distortion things, stuff that will just make your arms age or whatever when you go into it, or make you young again or too young, or I don't know. It could be so horrid. Like could be so much bad stuff here. Uh, I also hope they turn it into the movie, but I'm repeating myself. You have to live with that.
The arena itself, though, is not the limit of these displays because often the fights will then bleed into the audience, sometimes literally. They may fight above the crowd, across bridges, moving platforms. Sometimes a fighter may even involve the crowd, depending on what horror they're visiting upon a bested opponent.
Great.
The arenas crackle with tension. The viewers lean forward in their seats with eyes wide and the leers of hungry predators etched upon their faces. Be they aerial ballets of bloodletting, zero-gravity mass murder, or carefully selected menageries on the prowl, all cult performances have one thing in common: the arena is slick with blood and viscera by the show's conclusion.
Great.
These cults, though, are not purely for entertainment. As with gladiatorial battles of old, the witch cults generate considerable social power within Kimura, and consequently they are very valuable allies for any cabal.
Yes, like they're a religious party. I know they're not. You know what I mean? But it's so funny that they have these parallels. And she looks like a priestess. I don't know why. Perhaps the stuff. I don't know. It feels a bit priestessy or culty. And yes, they are the party that you have to appease, even if you're a tyrant, lord, cabal leader or leaderess, whatever.
Not to mention the fact that their membership usually numbers in the thousand and are all highly trained killers who are worth recruiting for really any fight. They will put their time in to assist the cabals as well, because one thing they require is a strong supply of new slaves to use for their arena displays, so the cabals and witch cults both benefit from strong ties between one another.
Oh god, imagine that, like them being in the raids as well, and them making sure you don't die, so you can be taken to the arena. And oh god, that would be so horrifying. Imagine that, like this mob of carnage descending upon a planet, and you were like there in the street, and everyone's like murdered brutally, and horrid stuff happens, and you're like vomiting into the corner and are afraid, and they're like approaching, and the blades like hack away at everyone and everything, and it's bleeding and sweating, and you're crying, and suddenly they stop. They stop, and you think, oh, everything's okay. They stopped. Perhaps they had a an order to stand down to go back, and they suddenly like part and go to the walls of the street, and this one of these like priestess cultist women comes smiling, and you just feel coldness in the air and coming towards you, and you know, and you've heard the legends of the witches. If you see the witch, you wish you were dead or whatever, and then you come and whatever. That would be so horrific. Like, we could do so many great horror movies with this. Oh god, I love this. I don't know, this part I really like this. Like, because it's the details are so good that and so detailed, whatever, that I really can picture situations now. Like I can picture situations that could arise here, which I love. I love it.
But they can also operate independently. Witch raids are considered an art form of themselves to many Dark Eldar, and a place on these raids can indeed come at a high price. Having said all of that, despite all the artistry and pageantry to which the witch cults play up to and are known primarily for, their displays are truly a veritable orgy of violence and carnage.
Yeah, an orgy or a ritual to feed Slanesh. And why, by the way, I just wondered, why does she have this talisman of a hand that we saw more and more and more? Like, we've seen this repeatedly now. The stupid talisman of a hand. Is that her hand or his hand? I think it's a she. Yeah, it's a she. Is it her hand? Does she keep her spare hand with her in case her hand is cut away? Do I want to know? No, I don't.
They're experts in combat and they employ surgical precision to eviscerate their enemies. Any who may bear witness to their engagements would describe the horror as a bizarre juxtaposition of joyous celebration twinned with ruinous horror. Wherever the witch cult will visit, they surely leave behind them a broken, mangled wake of shattered mortal corpses.
Yes, they will.
And then at last, we come to the coven of the homunculi.
Yeah. That is like, is a homunculus, that's an artificial creation, isn't it? Is that something like, perhaps you will explain it, then don't shout at me then. But I think they are something like artificial humans.
They are legendary masters of torture and despair, but they also play a far more vital, indeed critical role for the Jakari. At a base level,
God,
they produce
what
drugs and
is
toxins,
that?
cruel abominations that deal in body modification.
Oh, that's so sad. Yeah, it's so sad. I thought his head was gone and it was just the body, and the brain was like in this tank or whatever, and it was just flesh feeling pain, whatever.
Abhorrent, unnecessary surgery and vivisection. Yet their endless experimentation and diabolical methods have brought to hold power over death itself, and for the Jakari, this has become one of their most valuable services. At some time,
Hello, do you have time to talk about death and my service to you so you won't die? Don't read the small print. Don't read the small print.
every Dark Eldar must visit the homunculi, though likely not by choice. They occupy the vast labyrinth beneath the core of Camorra, and here in the darkest pits of the damned, they ply their trade and indulge in horrors that mortals could only describe as being like the mythical realm of hell itself.
Okay, we've got Science Hell now. Hello, welcome to Science Hell. Let's see what Science Hell has in store for us today.
Their walkways, halls, and corridors are a maze of optical illusions, living mortals twisted into the form of objects. Eyes follow you embedded within the walls, and many things appear to be in a still state of living, despite the seeming impossibility of such a fact. As we discussed earlier, the Eldar cycle for birth is longer than other races. Although this is vague and unspecific, it must take a considerable time because the homunculi have developed a process whereby artificially grown Jakari are the more common method for offspring. They will grow within insect-like honeycombs that permeate the layer of the homunculi. Within these chambers, the embryo Jakari are accelerated artificially, although again, this is an unspecified period. When ready, they're broken out in a chrysalis-like sac to then become what are known as half-born, a despised yet common member of Camorra's society.
Okay, so and then there are souls that have to find them, and if the souls have found them, they will be whole again, perhaps?
Their true power, though, lies in their ability to prevent death, in a manner of speaking. In order to achieve this, willing high-status members of a cabal must enter into something akin to a Faustian bargain with the homunculi, whereby they will regenerate their bodies should they be killed, except in order to do this, they have to agree to give the homunculi a portion of their eternal soul. This again adds weight to what we have come to understand, that Eldar souls are very different things compared to the other mortal races, and that their souls can in fact be dealt with in something like a commodity. The reason, of course, that any Jakari should want to avoid permanent death of their physical body should be obvious.
Yeah, they don't want to fall to Slaanesh.
They wish to avoid their soul having nowhere to go other than into the willing clutches of Slaanesh.
Yeah.
So the homunculi are capable of restoring an entire body, the physical self, with the smallest amount of that person's remains. In addition to what I've said already about the Eldar soul and mortal souls, there seems to be an additional thing we learn here about the way in which Eldar souls, Dark Eldar, Jakari seem to be able to exert some will.
So they cripple their souls, so they are Voldemorting themselves? Oh, great. Great. So they are Voldemorting themselves to not get into Slaanesh. But in the end, they all will go back to her clutches.
Over what happens next. This also bleeds into this idea that Eldar souls formerly did not necessarily go into the warp immediately upon death, but instead lay in something like a purgatory. Regardless, providing the physical body can be restored within a day or so, there's a strong chance that the Jakari soul will be able to locate it and resume its state of living undeath.
Okay.
However, it is known that sometimes slaves and tortured victims of the Dark Eldar can also be resurrected by the homunculi in this way, so there may be something going on in regard to the soul that we don't fully understand here.
Yeah, so as I said, I think the soul is an excitation of the warp or something, like a separate field here. So everyone, perhaps and we know that Eldar have pretty strong psychic abilities. They don't anymore, I know, but they did that once. So there might be very strong excitation of this mind field that is very loosely connected to the warp, or that is the warp perhaps, or that is something like the warp. I don't know. So other beings might not be as strong. Like the excitations of the field might not, of the soul field, let's call it that, are not as strong, but I imagine that some still can get like amplified by stuff like their research or whatever and be reborn as well then. Yeah, that would make sense at least, but perhaps it's completely wrong.
This is also the reason why, when enacting raids upon the Materium, Jakari do not like to become entangled in extended confrontations over days and weeks. It would be unusual to see them participate in some kind of extended campaign, especially if the risk of physical death were very high. They prefer instead to strike, secure what they need, and get out as quickly as possible. Then, should any high-value members of a cabal have suffered any unfortunate accidents, they can be safely restored.
Yeah, okay, so they're hit and run. I think we heard that before in the first video about the faction, that they are hit and run. Yeah, that makes sense now.
The key to this terrible process is, unsurprisingly, pain. The Jakari are rejuvenated by witnessing agony, and if saturated with enough of it, they can heal from almost any wound.
So in a battle, they're like basically immortal. That's interesting. How quickly can they heal? Is it does it depend on how strong the warp is around, like, or does it have nothing to do with the warp? That's so weird.
As such, the mortal remnants of those delivered to the dubious care of the homunculi are installed into crystal-fronted pods. These sarcophagi are arrayed in concentric circles that rise up into the darkness, each holding a semi-cocooned Jakari warrior in a regenerative state. The patients literally drink in the dark energy of the torturer's craft as the homunculus works upon his victim below, ably assisted by his rack servants and the semi-sentient engines of pain.
Engines of pain. Why? Jesus Christ. Why? It's like, it's so horrible. Oh, it's so horrible.
As a cacophony of shrieks rises around the chamber, those installed in the cocoons slowly feast upon the energies ever so gradually growing back into their bodies, skeleton first, then muscle, sinew and skin, until they're whole once more. During times of war, it is common for every regeneration pod to be filled with red raw fiends shivering and rattling with every fresh scream.
Great.
Of course, all of this...
That is so great, yeah. It's so horrifying. So horrifying. Like, they've got a hive of people relishing the pain of other things below. So prison of war of the Jakari is probably the worst thing that can happen to you, like, or one of the worst things, like, who knows?
Does not compare with the true horror of the homunculi, and that is their presence in raids upon real space itself. The homunculi are terrifying enough within Komorra, but when stepping into the real world, they are beyond people's concept of a living nightmare. And most comically is the fact that homunculi will compete in what could be best described as sport with one another, except that this sport is of course foul and disgusting.
Okay. What? So are homunculi... Perhaps I didn't get it. Are the homunculi the flesh stacks that they like create to make people resurrect again? Or are the homunculi just the scientists that do that?
Members of a coven will compete to create the most pleasingly abhorrent monstrosities with the twisted bodies and pieces of their captives, creating bizarre creations that are a true parody of humanoid form.
Okay, so they're artists. They're artists that like to compete with each other. Nothing to see here. Move along.
Sickening to observe, sad and pitiful in form, the eyes of individuals twisted into these horrific forms, unable to speak, but eyes burning with agony, twinned with humiliation and despair that say all they are unable to, as their mouths are very often sewn shut or just removed entirely.
Yeah, I have no mouth and I must scream, literally. Great, great.
The homunculi will unleash these hellish minions upon their enemy, watching their effectiveness with interest.
Yeah, I mean, the Tyranids would probably not care. The Necrons might not care as well, but I think every other legend thing is gonna be like, what the frick is this? Oh god, what is this? I was you once. Oh god.
They consider such competition to be very inspiring and will often offer a
So
well-deserved
inspiring.
compliment to one another should rivals achieve some especially impressive act of violence, although compliment might be something of a generous description, orgasmic growl might be a better way to consider it.
Just have to imagine them like, oh, your flesh mutilated thing is pretty horrific. But wow, that one is pretty horrid. Like I've never seen something that horrid. Oh. like Tim Allen does in Home Improvement. I don't know why I think of that here, and it's oh god. Like this is. I hope this is. I want to see all of this. I will hate it, but I want to see it. It's like, but also. It's so weird. Such weird stuff. So horrifying. You know?
How any Jakari actually becomes a homunculus is not clear. They're believed to be of an advanced age, as their withered, nightmarish appearance suggests. Their harrowing state of self-mutilation leaves many a homunculi unable or unwilling to engage in physically demanding tasks. Indeed, most homunculi eschew mundane physical exertion and instead perform their grand tasks through supplicants and minions.
Yeah, okay. So the others are just the revive mechanics, and these are just different kind of scientists. Like they are weird scientists that are ancient and horrible. And I noticed they have like some appendages, like more arms or whatever. And yeah, I mean that makes sense.
Interestingly enough, some homunculi covens have taken an interest in the development of the Primaris marines. While crude by the standards of Kimura, these genetically developed humanoids piqued the interest of Uriel Rakarth, who now seeks to raid the materium and capture a Primaris from every chapter to add these samples to his vast libraries of material flesh.
But aren't some of them dead? Like, aren't some of the Primarchs dead, or are there new ones? I've not been there, so we'll see in the horror source.
Homunculi Coven do not focus primarily on the physical and will instead look to the suffering of the soul. They will prefer to witness their captive victims debase themselves or be driven at an agonizingly delayed speed to madness. They perceive themselves as being far too adept to lower themselves to the level of physical torture. Such practices bore them. They're tediously repetitive at this stage. Instead, they will challenge themselves to end a captive victim without even physical contact.
Yeah, so they are the most intelligent ones, and thus the most creative ones, and that's why they are like more into mental stuff, which is yeah, great. It's even worse than the witches. Like what? I wonder if there are stories out there where people like, or perhaps fan stories or whatever, where people will like describe what they will do, and like the stories all compete to be more horrific. That I could see that. I don't know, but oh god, this. Yeah, like there are places that I don't want to go, and I think mental torture of the highest order is something I would never want to write. I think, like I wrote this one story about the guy that like fell in love, and then the love betrayed him in the worst way possible, like really nasty stuff, and that was already very hard to write, and yeah, I couldn't write stuff like this. I think so. People who could, it's like. I hope they're okay. Like, that takes a strain. Or not, but then I wouldn't want to meet them, so.
They seek to enact suffering and despair through fear and torment to a stage of insanity by a process of psychological torment. Of course, this may take many months or even many years to achieve,
Yeah.
and they will be there by their victim's side to savour every second and minute of it.
It's okay. Not gonna be over soon. It's okay, it's not gonna be over soon. Oh, this is so macabre.
This has enabled them to develop chemical or pathogen-based weapons. Some even suggest subdimensional parasites that lay eggs in their subject's brain, that once
great.
infected will drive the target afflicted with waking nightmares so intense that they will claw out their own eyes, rip off their face, or even drive sharpened lengths of material into their brain to silence the horrors they are unable to escape or abate.
Okay, that's pretty tame. I know it's horrific, but that I've seen and heard that a lot before. So yeah. But mind parasites isn't that's like, couldn't they just like park them next to the gate of Cain? Would do the same thing, like but yeah, it's horrific.
Of course, the process of regeneration is not limited to the Jakari. Some homunculi will ensure their victims go through continual, repeated states of birthing, so that even should they die or commit suicide as a result of their torment, they will be forced to endure it again and again, unable to free themselves from their suffering.
Yeah, I guess that much. I mean, that was pretty clear that they will use that technique to like keep people alive as well, like how many cycles of mental torture do there have to be? Like first physical, like 3 cycles physical, 50 cycles mental, until nothing is left of a personality. Who knows? And until no memories are left. Such horrid stuff. It's such a dark place. Such a dark place. I mean, they're not called Dark Elder for no reason. So now I think I know why. It's like so horrid. Disgusting and horrid.
Of course, there is one more I choose to make mention of, that is the flesh collectors. When homunculi send their Talos engines to accompany a raid in real space, these monstrous servants are often tasked with collecting specific samples for their masters, and typically this involves devouring certain types of a creature from a planet's populace or subsuming a specific individual such as a planetary governor. However, at times the demands of the homunculi are far more nuanced. When raiding Tal space, the Talos known as the Marrow Giver was once instructed to consume only those fire warriors who had witnessed the rest of their strike team slaughtered before them.
Okay, so they want to grab people with PTSD because they're easier to torture. Great.
Failure to complete such a task, or worse, deviation from instructions, inevitably will see a Talos dismantled and discarded. To outside observers, such stringency may seem wasteful.
That flying spider thing, I like its design, but it's why? Like, I'm not afraid of spiders, but this one looks pretty mean. And why does it have like this beak face thing? Ugh.
But in their craft, the homunculi require absolute precision and perfection. So different types of harvested material can carry different properties, each of course having a unique purpose. Musculature and nervous tissue are combined in ways unimagined by nature or mankind, and the emotions absorbed by a creature's flesh upon its death are then extracted, enhanced, and fashioned into weapons. So to pollute such work with impurities, meat from a wrong species, blood permeated with the wrong emotion, would be to spoil the homunculus' work, which they may have slaved over for many decades.
Yeah, it's hard work to create weird flesh things.
It could deny an entirely new morbid creation to the galaxy. Furthermore, the homunculi may often wish to reconstitute the soupy remains of a Talos victim and then revive them into life so they can then be interrogated again before, of course, a harrowing existence of pain and suffering. For any world who has endured the assaults and raids of the Jakari, whether they know them by title or not, the entities who mortals fear more than any other are the homunculi.
Yeah. Yeah, homunculi and the witches, I think. I think homunculi are even worse, but I can imagine the witches being bad as well. Like, the witches are bad because, yeah, but I think homunculi you taught can belong. So yeah, I would give it to them as well. Like, they're the most horrific things, but the witches are also pretty bad. The end of all things.
Lastly, we often endlessly repeat the phrase, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the Dark Eldar, it could be more appropriate to say, in the grim darkness of the far future, there lie in the
Totally
shadows
pale.
the Jakari, and they will drag you away to a darkened corner of their realm and submit you to endless, unspeakable suffering that will destroy your body and soul. But it doesn't quite have the same ring to it.
Yeah,
At face
that's true.
value, the Jakari are living nightmares, terrifying monsters who seek only to inflict misery, despair, and agony upon others. This is, of course, entirely accurate, but scratching the surface to a deeper level, stripping away their spiky armour and numb, cold-hearted exteriors, they are in many ways more like scared, lost children who
You know what the horrid thing is? Children are very, very nasty. That's the wrong. That probably comes off wrong. And by that I mean non-socialized 2-year-old children. They are so malevolent. They are probably, save for some psychopaths, the state, like the state of, not the state, the stage of human that is most malevolent, because they're purely self-centered. And so a self-centered thing that won't care for you and is not social, like they are social, don't get me wrong, but so I kind of like this comparison. But yeah, like I like children a lot, but I know from
stray
I know from psychology that 2-year-old children are purely self-centered, I think, and so they can be pretty nasty, very nasty. So kind of fits though. I think when they are 3 and get socialized, they are gonna become like more like angels. Let's say it like that, or they are stay that way. Some of them do, but all in all, they don't. So yeah.
from the path, and now live each and every day in constant anxiety of each other, and so as to avoid the drain of Slaanesh, where to find their next fix. The Jakari twist their bizarre imaginations and perverted ambitions to drive their upside-down society, and yes, their hellish endeavours are all too real for the slaves and captives forced to suffer in Kimura, but all we can do for such lost souls is give to them our pity and prayer.
Yeah.
No matter who the Jakari drag off into the eternal night, finding themselves in some pitch, blood-soaked torture chamber saturated with sights and sounds no one should ever wish to experience, they will quickly lose all hope of ever knowing normality again. We, however, can know that in many ways, all this suffering, all this horror, is at least, to some extent, a perverse charade. Until recently, the Jakari had no opportunity, no real sense of forward development. They would exist only to continue to exist.
But he's gonna say but.
However, there is some change in the wind. Certainly by no means all, but some of the Dark Eldar have begun to drift toward the newly emerging cause of the Inari. This new pathway gives the Dark Eldar an escape, a way out, and a new path that they can see may hold some actual value in following. All the while the Inari continue to stride forward fearlessly, writing the next chapter of their story as they do, in the name of one of the most ancient races that exists in the galaxy of the 42nd millennium. Jakari, Craftworld, Exodite, Harlequin, Inari.
Inari? What are the Inari? I forgot. Are those the elders? Like this, the chick with the white hair seemed to be like an elder god a bit.
When Aeneid finally meets Slaanesh, they will all be Eldar once again. The only unanswered question still remaining is that when this finally comes to pass, will it mean the total destruction of the Eldari, or their eternal rebirth, ushering in a new era for the galaxy?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think you're effed. Pain is the only universal constant. Pain is all. This is the key to creation and destruction both. Thus does he who masters pain become a god. Urian, Rakarth, Master, Homunculi. There is something though. Like pain is very like pain might be one of the most universal constants, and that is true. I think you can't like if there's pain and you're gonna be like if you have the prospect of being of experiencing pain, in most cases you want to go away from the pain. Like you can't like rationality will not work. You would just go away from the pain. Like if you touch onto a burning stove, like it's in your body, you would like push away. I mean, if you're a mess expert's not, no, perhaps there are exceptions there, but usually it's like I think it's pain is very, very powerful motivator and thing driving us through many things. Though of course that doesn't mean you should do what they're doing. I mean naturally. But yeah, those were the Dark Eldar. Like this one really, really made me understand them, I think. Yeah. I really liked this one a lot. Like it made me think a lot. It was horrifying, it was disgusting AF, but I understood a lot about them, I think. Like I understood like the most about them in this part here, and I loved it. So thanks, Luetin, for doing this one as well. I really, really enjoyed it. And I can't wait for more because I already felt like I met some of the like some scenes where Dark Eldar are involved. Like I could feel being there somewhere, their experiments, like watching that, or like it was concrete enough for me to form pictures about stuff. And the other things were not that detailed. Like I have a general picture, like this muddy thing, perhaps, but here I think I feel pretty confident and understanding what they are, which is unfortunate in a way because it's disgusting. But anyway, so next are the orcs. Can't wait for the orcs. They are gonna be probably pretty funny. And yeah, also tell me what background you want for the orcs, perhaps if there's something like just a theme. Like, do you want Space Orcs background for that? Do you want to stay with Nurgle, good old Nurgle? Do you want Slanesh? Do you want the Emperor? I don't know. Just tell me in the comments. Yeah. So can't wait for more. And also the giveaway will end in about 12 hours. So if you still want your horror story written and the chance at that, go to the description. There's the giveaway link for the horror story. So I will decide the victor or victorious, whatever, tomorrow. And yeah. Also, tomorrow, Wheel of Time will start again. If you're interested in that, I will read through Wheel of Time book 4 every day in a chapter. And other than that, I just want to say thanks for watching. Hope you liked it. Consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and I will see you soon. Take care of yourself. Bye.